Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to breakfast in the class on Zot Chanuka, the final day of Chanuka. Today's breakfast in the class, bear with me, is dedicated loving memory of Ms. Lily Safra Shmat Leah Bat Chana. Her philanthropy has reached so many throughout the entire world, and as well, dedicated in loving memory of Lisa Carey Aliyah Shalom Shmat Lisa Bat Sarah for her first Askara, the 8th day of Chanuka, which is today, sponsored by Ike and Evelyn Carey. Hazaku Baruch, Evelyn as well, for your help in spreading the class through our dedicated group of sharers on social media who are sharing the class with their people every day. If you'd like to join that group, send us a message and we'll add you. Breakfast in the class also dedicated in loving memory, Lilu Nishmat Chaim Ben Rachel, sponsored by Ezra Yosef Kada, sponsored by Ariel Maman, dedicated in honor of his parents, who are now grandparents, Tzvi Nachman and Georgette Maman, and his in-laws, Moshe and Bela Ohayon, Dorot Yisharim Mevorach, to the new grandparents. I don't know if it's the first. Is it the first grandparents? For your in-laws. Okay, Hazaku Baruch, congratulations. Also sponsored by Yaron Dahan, dedicated in honor of the birth of a baby boy to Ivan and Ariel Maman. Simantov Mabruk, did I pronounce it right? I know that's his French name. Ivan, right? Okay. I want to make sure I don't say Yavan. That's not very popular this week. Okay. Dedicated also in loving memory of Nurit Roshan Zamir, Lilu Nishmat Nurit Nushfarin, Bat Hanom V'Yehuda, Aleh Shalom, sponsored by Asher Roshan Zamir. As well, dedicated the week of breakfast in the class, sponsored by Michael Shem Tov, dedicated in honor of the birth of a baby boy to Ivan and Ariel Maman, Siman Tom Mabruk. A lot of people are very happy for your simcha. Bezat Hashem should be zochet to see Lechniso B'Yitov Shel Abraham Vinu B'Yitov Zmano. Also dedicated loving memory of Vanessa's mother, Diana Cohen, Aleh Shalom Lishmat, Diana Bat Sophie Charles, sponsored by Vanessa and Joe God. And last but not least, breakfast in the class is sponsored by David E. Ash, where there's a new website where you can support us by purchasing a t-shirt or hoodie, honoring your capacity to good today and every day at capacityforgood.com. My friends, also as I mentioned yesterday, we have an opportunity to sponsor and to support all the great activities that are going on here at Safra and at Chazak. It is a tremendous opportunity before the year ends and your tax books close. Get in before that time goes with your tzedakah, with your tax-free dollars. Hashem should bless us. We're doing a campaign, an end-of-year campaign for $100,000. We would love to have your support for that as well. We'll give you the link if anyone would like it, and we'll put it as well out with the class. My friends, Vizot Chanukah. This holiday, this day, in its final day, has become known as Zot Chanukah, this final day. Why is it called that? What gave it this moniker? Because as we read so beautifully in the Sefer Torah, Sammy, before you go, I got to tell you, we read so beautifully today in the Sefer Torah. We had today, the Sefer Torah was read in stereo. It was magnificent. I had it coming from both sides, the voice. It was wonderful. It says, Tre koli lo mishtami. You can't really hear two voices at one time. But these are two voices that blended so beautifully in harmony. The Vizot Chanukat HaMizbeach. This was the Hanukkah, the dedication of the Mizbeach. And we heard it so beautifully from Murray Dayan, ably assisted by Sammy Sutton. So, at the last part of the reading of Chanukah is Zot Chanukah the Mizbeach, and the culmination of all of those readings gives this day, the final day, its name. But I want to talk a little bit about what it is that we came here to do, both on Chanukah, but also finally on this last hurrah, if you will. You ever go to the fireworks shows? There's a beautiful thing, but then kind of the finale is always this, extraordinary booming, explosions of light, splendor, and that's really what we're experiencing today. So I want to go back maybe and start in the beginning. The book Torah Tavlin begins with a beautiful foreword, and in it he quotes the words of the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch writes that the three regalim, the three holidays that we have in the Torah, which are Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, the three regalim were designed and spaced throughout the year in order for us to be able, listen to what he says, in order for us to be able to deal with the fact that a human being, a person in our nature, we need to experience happiness. We need to have joyous occasions, wonderful. We need to have a good time in life. Okay? And the Torah understood that if we did not satisfy, if we did not provide a channel, an opening, an opportunity for us to be able to take this physical need and line it up and match it up with a spiritual deed, what would happen? The happiness, the joy would manifest itself in some wild party, in some egregious display of physicality, not rooted in anything good, in anything uplifting. Even the eating and drinking of the holiday, therefore, is sewn in, it's woven into the fabric of the Yom Tov, so that you could eat meat and you could drink wine. And what is it? It's an expression of holiness. V'samachta b'chagecha ve'ayita ach sameach. Listen to those words. You will rejoice, v'samachta b'chagecha, in your holiday, ve'ayita, and you will be ach sameach, and you will be only happy. Now the chinuch is telling us that if the Torah did not give us this outlet, what would have happened? We would have been happy anyway. But that happiness would not have landed, if you will, in the best of places. It would have landed maybe in a different place. And that's why Rambam says that when a person is enjoying the happiness of Yom Tov, he needs to make sure that he's also taking care at his meal that he has, which he's celebrating, such a beautiful thing. He should make sure that he invites someone who doesn't have a place to go. He makes sure to invite an ani, a ger, yatom, ve'almana, because Rambam says, if not, what do you have? You only have simchat kreso. You only have the joy of your stomach. Now this always bothered me, this idea. Why is it that Rambam only over here describes, only when it comes to the holidays, does Rambam say, look, guys, be careful, careful. If you don't share what you have, that's not real joy. That's not simchat Yom Tov. That's you satisfying your belly. How come Rambam doesn't say that about having money? Make sure you give tzedakah, otherwise your money is, it's you're stockpiling cash like Scrooge McDuck. Okay, that's what you're doing, right? Be careful, Shabbat. Make sure you have a guest. If you don't have a guest on Shabbat, it's not real oneg. That's oneg of your belly. The answer can be understood because of the words of the Sefer HaChinuch. If the whole point of the Shalosh Regalim, says the Chinuch, was to give you a kosher outlet for the joy that a human being needs to have, if that's what its purpose is, we're trying to elevate that joy. So what happens if the joy doesn't get elevated at all? You've literally taken the purpose of the holiday and you've rendered it useless. That's not Simchat Yom Tov anymore. That's Simchat Kreso. So without the holiday, what would eating meat and drinking wine have been? It would have been the person's expression of the fact that I like a delicious steak and I like fine wine. That's all it would be. So therefore, says the Torah, make sure you do something to bring spirituality to that act of eating. Rav Elias Svei, Alav HaShalom, was Rosh Yeshiva at Philadelphia Yeshiva. He said something remarkable. He said, as an extension of the Sefer HaChinuch, the Sefer HaChinuch taught you that the Torah gave you these holidays on either side of the map. One, right, when is Pesach and Shavuot? Right at the springtime, heading into when everything thaws and it's going into summer. You're getting ready for the happy, the parties, the enjoyment. The Torah said, 1 second, make sure that you figure out a spiritual way for this physical thing to manifest. And then as well, Sukkot, when you're about to hunker down, when the rains come, you're about to go into your home, and the shifting of the person's lifestyle moves from the outdoors to the indoors. The Torah bookended those places with holidays. Said Rav Elias Svei something magnificent. He says that the same way that the Torah did this for the early Jew, the Chachamim did this for the later Jew. For the Jew that would be in Galut, a Jew that maybe would live in a time of more darkness and of more persecution. If it used to be that we needed simcha, this expression, this outpouring, to lift the human being, we needed it 3 times a year. The little Moadim, Purim, Chanuka, Tu B'Shvat, these things that the Chachamim instituted in our times, they were because a Jew needed more opportunity to be happy. And if you needed more opportunities to be happy, then there needed to be more beautiful outlets for that happiness. Now, this to me is a magnificent game-changing experience when you think about the holiday in this way. I want to point out something that I think is magnificent. Our rabbis tell us that we have an obligation to light because the oil burned for 8 days. We have an obligation to light 8 days because of the shemen. Now, it's an interesting confluence, this idea, that the word of shemen, which is the way the miracle happened, which is oil, is also the root of the word shmona, which also sits at the heart of the word of the people that saved the Jewish people, chashmonaim. So the root of this holiday is these 3 letters, Shin, Mem, Nun. Okay? Shemen. Now it's interesting to notice that these 3 things, they play a fascinating kind of intertwining role in our story. You know, Shmona, as we know, 8, the number 8, is a number which is considered to be above nature. The cycles that are natural in this world are 7-day cycles. 7 days make a week, 7 years Shemitah, 7 Shemitahs a Yovel, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. It's fascinating that the 7-day week cycle is something that has taken hold across all religions and cultures. You don't have, like, as an example, now that's weird. Like, really, technically, there's no reason why in Brazil they shouldn't have a week that lasts 10 days. And in Germany, a week that lasts 12 days. And in Canada, a week that lasts 4 days, right? Etc., etc. There's no reason why we should have had this synonymous day grouping called 7. But the Sifrei Kabbalah teach us that actually the root of 7 is the root of the natural world, which is also why there are 70 nations in the world. Because that is an expression, a magnified expression, again, of the natural physical phenomena. That is the concept of 7. You have 6 days of a week, Shabbat, and then we return once again. But 8 always represents the lifting of something above its natural progressions. And that's why the Brit Milah is celebrated on the 8th day. Because God said to Avraham Avinu, I'm going to give you a child. But the covenant that you're going to have with me, in order to have this child, in order to give birth to this people, is going to be through Brit Milah on the 8th day. Listen carefully, my friends. Listen carefully. Avraham Avinu, who's the first person given Brit Milah, in the context of building his nation through Yitzchak, who himself was a physical impossibility. Avraham Avinu could not have children. Sarah Imenu could not have children. What does God do? He takes these 2 individuals and he raises them above their mazal. He raises them, so to speak, above the stars. And he says to them, if you can count these stars, ko yeh zaracha, so will be your children. They will be beyond the ability to count. Now, the idea of being beyond the ability to count, most people translate as so many numbers. But that's always a funny thing to say, because no matter how many of something you have, there's always a number. What does it mean, asher lo yisafer merov, that cannot be counted because of how many there are? Everything can be counted. It's just a matter of time. So, get a good team, get out there, divide it into teams of, 100, 1,000, million, and count them. You can count them. There's no such thing as something that can't be counted because of how many it is. What God was saying is, Asher lo yisafer merov. What God is saying is that there's no way to quantify that number. That their qualitative achievements will be beyond putting some sort of a number on that thing. When there's something that we say is something you would never trade for any price, we say that it's priceless. And what does it mean that it's priceless? We say that at any money, at any figure, I'm not going to sell you my child. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million or it's $1 billion, or it's $100 billion, if it's $1 trillion, it's all the gold and silver in the world. I'm not selling you my child. What are you talking about? That is not something where there's any sort of drawn comparison between the thing that you're using to be able to give it a value and the object itself. What God was telling Abraham is that the concept of numbers, it doesn't fit, it won't fit your children in terms of the scope of impact that they will have. My friends, that is the concept of Shmona, of the Brit on the 8th day. It is the fact that the Jewish people was designed to be an impossible people. The Midrash tells us that the Jewish people can be compared to shemen, because one of the concepts of shemen is that no matter if you mix it with water, even if you mix it up and stir it, it doesn't matter. It might take a little bit of time, but ultimately the oil will separate and rise to the top. The more vigorously you mix, the longer it takes for the oil to separate. Does anyone know why that is? Sorry? Because as you mix it, what happens is the oil is, so to speak, more and more and more separated, because it's now surrounded by water all around. And it takes time for the oil to extract itself by nature of its viscosity to be able to rise above the oil, that the water that's going to sit beneath it. But no matter how many times the Jewish people has seemed on the brink of assimilation, has seemed on the brink of being wiped out, every single time the Jews automatically and ultimately wind up pulling apart and pulling away. That is the concept of shemen and shmona and chashmonaim. It took a group of people recognizing that they needed to act in a miraculous way in order to bring miracles. It took Matityahu and Yochanan acting the way, seeing themselves that way in order for God to be able to treat them that way. You know, if you act in a way where you put yourself down and you're dirt in the workplace, how's everyone else at work going to treat you? Like a doormat. If you have no self-respect, ain't nobody else giving you respect. When a person trusts, respects themselves, then other people also respect them. Rabbi Sachs was fond of saying, non-Jews respect Jews who respect themselves. If you're a Jew and you make fun of yourself, if you're a Jew and you put down and you make fun of Judaism, what do you think they're going to think about Judaism? If Judaism isn't important to you, what will they consider? It's even less important to them. But if Judaism is very important to you, people around you will think twice before they try and push down or act against your Judaism. My friends, so it took Chashmonaim to activate Shemen, to make the Shemen. And I always think this, the Nes of the Pach Shemen, it wasn't inside the Pach Shemen. It wasn't in the jar. It was the hand that was holding the jar. It was the people who'd already acted like Shemen that brought out this activated, there's something called activated charcoal, right? There are atoms that can be activated, electrons, neutrons, right? That can be activated, I think, as far as I remember. There's shemen that can be activated. Once the chashmonaim, and I always thought how beautiful it was that it's the center of the word of their name. It makes up the innermost part of their name. Where was the shemen? It was inside of them. They were activating the power of Shmona, of rising up and above. My friends, it is impossible to be able to act this way, to see this way, if a person does not find ways to be in a happy state of mind. You cannot be large if you're not happy. You cannot be bold or take risks if you're not happy. So what the Sefer HaChinuch first teaches us, and what's then extended by Rav Eli Esvei, is a very powerful line here. A human being needs to have joy. How do you take that joy and make sure that it's not something shallow, that it's something deep? Is you give it a spiritual dimension. And once you've done that inside of yourself, you'll start to see that the person that you are is far greater than the person you thought that you were. But without the simcha, It's impossible. So my friends, let's try for 1 second and imagine what the work of this day is and what this will end. Let's try and understand what the work of this day would be. If today is a day of Vizot Chanuka, today is the day of Shmoneh, on the holiday of Shemen, brought about by people called Chashmonaim. So we're on 888 today. It's like when you go in the 777, that's the win. The Jewish people have an even bigger win at the casino. Okay? I've never been in a casino in my life. I'm not sure if there's any 888 at any casino out there, but, right? Someone should invent one. You with me? What do? Today is a day to express simcha and to tie it to something ruchani. To take your favorite piece of Torah and to study it. And to have that simcha come alive. To do an act of chesed that is beyond your capacity, beyond what you thought you could do. And to find joy in it. It has to be something that carries simcha along with it. This is why we have this minhag of eating donuts. We want you to remember and remember and remember shemen, shemen, shemen. Please God, right after today, we'll go on a very long diet where we have nothing fried for a very long time. But for the last remaining hours of this holiday, v'tovel b'shemen raglo. It says about Asher that he's blessed. You know why? Because he bathes his feet in oil. And I always thought such an interesting thing. How gnarly were this dude's feet? That the Torah has to come tell us. V'tovel b'shemen raglo. What, do you have bunions? What's going on down there? Right, he doesn't use the oil on his hands. What about his elbows? You don't hear about the rough patches there. How about his face? He didn't want that glow. How about his hair? Maybe, oil can be, argan oil can be good for the hair. What's v'tovel b'shemen raglo? I think there's something magnificent here. The word Asher in Hebrew means Osher with an aleph. What does it mean? Not wealth, that's with an ayin. What does Osher with an aleph mean? Happiness. Me'ushar. Someone who's happy. You know what it takes for someone to be happy? V'tovel b'shemen raglo. He needs to dip his feet in, we say. Dipping your feet is the lowest level of engagement. That's how you test the water. Nachshon ben Aminadav, he starts with tovel, b'mayim raglo. But eventually he takes it up and up and up and up a notch. You know what makes Asher so joyous? It's that there's never a situation which he feels is hopeless. There's never a time which he can't mine for some simcha, that he can't maintain a sense of hope, a sense of positivity in. He's always tovel b'shemen, in the supernatural, raglo. I think it's even more interesting that the word raglo, which means foot, also means lehitragel, which means to become used to. Asher is a person who gets used to the idea of flirting with shemen, the supernatural, with recognizing that things will work out. And I don't know how, but you know what? I'm going to act on the whim that they'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'll be okay. V'tovel b'shemen raglo. To bring it full circle, the word raglo, which means to become used to something, lihitragel, is the word that we started this class with, where the chinuch told us the meaning of these holidays is to bring joy. What is the Torah's terminology for these holidays? Shelosha regalim. From finding cornerstones, from finding opportunities here and there, to bring a beautiful, deep sense of joy in things which are spiritual and are uplifting. Where a person thinks, even in dark times, that things will be happy, will be okay. That's how they look at the world. You know what happens if you do it once, and twice, and 3 times? And says Rabbi Elias Svei, 4 times, and 5 times, and 6 times. We need a little bit more in a world that's a little bit darker. However many times it takes. But if you do it on an ad hoc basis, enough times, what happens from regel? You get to lehitragel. You get to something that just becomes the way that you live. Hashem should bless us. That on this day, we should mine it for simcha and for shmona. We should have shemen, tovel b'shemen, raglo. We should be zocheh, be'ezrat Hashem, to draw down this hope, this positivity, and this miraculous occurrence that can take place in our life. But it only requires, more than anything else, us to expect and act and live as if we believe that miracles are always destined to come. May Hashem bless us with the gift of Zot Chanuka. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.